All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's get her going here. Start me off. Where to bid to go? Have it like $1,000. Open it up.
Is owner financing a good idea? Welcome back. I'm Ted Thomas. I've been involved in real estate and owner-seller financing for 30 years. Today's episode is a discussion about, is owner financing a good idea? Now, my answer is yes, and I'm going to give you a number of reasons why and a few examples so I can simplify the process for all of you viewers. Now, there's always been a handful of questions when it comes to selling properties, all right, because what happens when you're selling tax defaulted properties like my students do, they're going to probably sell the property in many cases on a contract of sale. So things like interest rates, accelerated loans, and how to get approved for home loans and so on comes up on a regular basis. So this isn't something that's going to surprise a lot of people. This is just a regular business in what we do on a regular basis. Now, the whole process can challenge a lot of people because when the interest rates start going up and money starts becoming scarce, well, then everybody wants to learn about it. Why? Because interest rates are so expensive that it keeps people from buying properties. So my area of expertise is tax defaulted real estate. Now, in this business, we utilize financing to help the people qualify for owner-seller financing. So owner-seller financing is a big deal. All right, so the question today is, in our episode, is owner financing a good idea? Well, it sure is if you're a seller, because it accelerates the process, number one, and then number two, it's another huge revenue source. So there's always a question, is owner-seller financing a good idea? And I'll be the first one to tell you yes, and I'll give you some examples as we go along. Now, we use contracts to sell the properties, and then we hold on to the property deed until the contract is fulfilled. Now, let me say that again because it's an important point. We're going to sell our properties with a contract of sale, installment contract, but we're going to hold on to the deed to the property. And why do we hold on to the deed? Because if the people don't pay us, then they're just on a rental agreement, and we can take the property back, and we don't have to go through a foreclosure process. So flexible sellers can modify their down payments, they can modify the number of years, they can modify the interest rates. In other words, these are loans that the seller can decide how they want to do the loan. Now, does that make a difference? Yes, because now you're flexible enough that you can approve a lot of people that can't get approved at banks. And I'll tell you a little bit about the banks as we go along here. But the attributes of seller financing are huge. Why? Because it gives you a competitive advantage. You see, when a person applies for a loan at a bank, they're going to have to wait to get approved. That might take 2 weeks. It might take 2 months. They're also going to have to get a home inspection. They're also going to have quiet title done. There's going to be a lot of things that have to be done. But in this episode, I'm answering the question, is owner financing a good idea? And it sure is, and I'll be right back to tell you more about it. Okay, now maybe you're an entrepreneur. Now, people have all kinds of personal and professional motivations. If you're an entrepreneur and you dream about creating a lot of money, or you dream about being famous, or you want a lot of recognition, well, that's what most entrepreneurs want. But being an entrepreneur is not so easy. You're going to have to know a lot more than the average person. So one of the biggest reasons people become entrepreneurs is because they don't feel like they fit into a mold in a corporation, like a template, and they don't want to work for someone else on someone else's timetable. All right, so you can be an entrepreneur, but you might have to work all the time. And why do I tell you that? Because I know people that have a regular job and they quit that job and they go home to be an entrepreneur. Well, nobody tells them what to do. They do it when they want and why they want to. However, they probably work 60 hours a week when they work at home for the same money they would have made if they worked at a corporation. So let's start out with a traditional real estate here, where buyers are buying normal properties. And what they do before you're allowed to buy a property, most brokers will say, look, let's learn about the financing, make sure you're qualified. If you're not qualified, there's no sense in us showing you property. So they want to learn about government loans. And there's all kinds of government loans. Here's the thing to remember about government loans. Number one, they're going to be strict about down payments. Number two, they're going to be very strict and structured about how you do make your payments. In other words, you will make a down payment, and then all the loan will be structured. By that I mean it's going to be a 30-year loan. Think about that. You're going to make 360 payments. They're all going to be the same unless there's some other adjustment in that loan. All right. So in the tax defaulted business, what we're doing is we're attempting to sell real estate that might be slightly used and abused. Well, we can find plenty of those properties. Why? Because all 3,000 counties, 3,000 plus counties across the United States will sell tax defaulted property. So there's going to be plenty of these. So if you become a seller, an owner seller, well, then you're going to be able to accelerate that sale because you don't have to wait for cash buyers to come along. All right, so there's all these different counties across the United States. They all have their own rules, their own regulations, but here's the one thing they do the same. The one thing they do is they have an auction.
How better go there? How better go there? How better go where? How better go here? How bid now? How better go?
And they sell the property to the highest bidder, and many properties are sold at 10 cents, 20 cents, 30 cents on the dollar, and the mortgage and the deed of trust loan have been deleted from the property. So the rules are different, but those two things I just mentioned are always the same. All right, now financing is not so simple. Most people have trouble with it, and it takes them a month or two just to get approved. Many people are rejected. Now, who gets rejected? Well, people are going to get rejected if they have a poor credit score called a FICO score. So if you don't have a credit score that's good, it meets the loan requirements of a bank, you're not going to get that loan. So if you're a buyer with a poor credit score, you're in trouble because the banks are going to reject them. All right, those people fall right into our hands. Why? Because we advertise seller financing. So that's answering the question. Is owner financing a good idea? Yes. We have seller financing, and we're flexible on what our down payments are going to be and what our payments are. That's the opposite of the bank. That's just the place you want to be. So the big question is, how do I get approved for a loan? Well, if you're an owner-seller, you're going to be able to approve those people right away. So my answer always is, yes, you want to be an owner-seller when it comes to selling tax defaulted property. Is that different than regular real estate? Absolutely. Now, people that don't have credit scores of 650 and above, they should expect to be rejected at the banks. All right, now some cases, they'll loan down to even 600 credit score, but what happens is they raise the interest rate and they raise the down payment. So keep all that in mind, because if your credit score is bad, you need to work at making it a lot better. All right, now, owner-seller financing, it's a whole different ballgame because we're flexible, and we're going to be flexible with the amount of down payment we want, and we're going to be flexible with the interest rate. So that's what today's episode is all about. Owner financing. Is it a good deal? It's the best deal. Why? Because you're going to make a profit when you sell. If you own the tax defaulted property, you make a profit when you sell it. Now you make another profit. And what's that profit? That second profit is going to come on the financing itself. Now, I'm fond of telling all my clients it's more important to get the money than to worry about the interest rates. Well, a lot of people think that way when it comes to tax defaulted property. Why? Because they don't have any other way to get a property. So they're going to be flexible and willing to pay higher interest rates, and they're going to be flexible on the terms. Instead of getting 30 years, they might only get 10 years of financing. So that's what we're considering at all time. All right, so I always recommend my students, I say to them, look, if you're going to do real estate, what you need to do is you need to start getting yourself versed on owner-seller financing, because you want to sell for a profit, and then you want to, if you can afford to do it, you want to sell with installment sale. So that's called a contract for sale. The contract will stipulate within the contract what the down payment is, how many payments are going to be made, and what the interest rate is. Now you can approve people that have a poor FICO score. All right, now look, I'm not suggesting for a minute that you go ahead and try to sell a property to someone that just had bad credit and isn't going to pay. The only people that we're going to allow to get seller financing from us is people that have a good job or have been on a job for a long time. So they've got to have a good job and a good history. However, what if they had a divorce? Well, a divorce is probably going to cause them to have a poor credit score. Or what if they've been in bankruptcy? They might be holding on to a bankruptcy for years, and what ends up happening is they have a poor FICO score the whole time. So they could go decades before they have a good score again. So we can help those people with their credit by taking a small down payment, getting high interest on our loan, and making another profit center for us. So owner financing is definitely a good idea. I say yes to that question all the time. Now, here's what experience has proved to me. There's buyers out there, and 25% of the buyers are not able to buy. Not just because they don't have enough money. They're not able to buy because they have a poor credit score. All right, now that FICO score is really important. Now, people that have poor FICO score, they still apply to the bank, but then they get rejected. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, when someone gets rejected, they're feeling pretty darn bad. But if you come along and say, I'll sell you a property on a contract of sale, and you'll take a lower down payment, and you'll take higher interest payments or whatever, if you'll do those things on a contract of sale and you'll get it done quickly, well, believe me, people are going to want to get the loan from you. All right, now let's think about this for a second. Can we make this happen quickly? I have clients that take the contracts with them when they go to show the house, and they make the contract right on the hood of the car. They sit there and they do a whole contract of sale and get it done. Now, that's no bank in the United States is ever going to have that happen. They're going to take weeks of time just to approve the loan. Then they're going to want an appraisal. Then they're going to want a home inspection and whatever. They're going to take months to buy a property. When we sell tax defaulted properties, we can sell them tomorrow afternoon. Why? Because we're going to qualify the people. We're interested. Can they make the payment? Do they have a good job? Most people are just going to ask you when they buy a property, tell me what my monthly payment is and how much is my down payment. That's about all they ever ask you about it. Owner-seller financing is really providing a huge solution for all the people that are struggling with credit. Now, just because they're struggling with credit doesn't mean they don't have a good job. If they've got a good job and they've been on that job for a while and they'll make payments, then you want to get a down payment from them, you want to get payments, and you want to do short-term financing for 5 years or 10 years at the most. No commercial bank is going to touch that loan. No commercial bank would touch it. But we're not just trying to get rid of property. What we're trying to do is we're trying to sell to people that have good employment and they're willing to pay high interest loans. All right, I'm going to give you some examples, but before I give you the example, I want you to understand conventional thinking says you need a lot of money to be in the tax defaulted business. I'm going to prove to you right now that you don't need a bundle of cash to get started in this business. For example, a couple from Wisconsin purchased a property at auction for only $8,000. It had no deed of trust and no loan. The tax assessed value was $55,000. So they actually purchased a property for less than 20 cents on the dollar. Now, the property was not perfect, was slightly used and abused. They needed to clean it up and do some minor touch-up of paint and cleanup. After completing all that, they spent $8,000 on the purchase and another $4,000 when they cleaned the property out. Now, what are they going to do with it? Well, they put the property out for sale, and they advertised contract for sale, seller financing. All right, well, a lot of people were attracted to that. So the property was worth $55,000. They sold it for $35,000. Now, you might remember, they sold it for $35,000, and you might remember they had $12,000 in it. So they ended up taking payments over a 10-year period of time. So two things. The first profit they made was selling the property. They made themselves $23,000 when they sold the property. Now, in addition to that, they financed the property. And when they did that, they made an additional $15,000 on top of that. So let's add it all up together, okay? So they made a profit. They made a profit when they sold the property of $23,000. Add to that another $15,000. If you add them both together, that's going to come to almost $40,000. $38,000 on a $12,000 investment. I'm sure you'd like to do the same thing, and you can when you use seller financing and a contract of sale. Now, those are just a teeny tiny glimpse of the spectacular kind of profits that could be happening to you. Now, I'm going to show you more of those as I go through other episodes. You see those little white circles? That's how many auctions are taking place within that state in the next 90 days. This calendar updates every single day. I'm here today to show you how to make money. To do that, I'm going to show you briefly that there are thousands of tax defaulted real estate properties across the 3,000 plus counties in the United States. This is quite interesting. You're looking at the Ted Thomas Magic Interactive Map and Auction Calendar. It changes every day. Now, I created the calendar and the map so I would know how many auctions are taking place every day in the United States. Now I can show the little guy how to make money. Most importantly, I created this system so I could have an auction list for each auction 24/7. Now, I'm out of time on this video. What I do want to remind you of is that right below me, if you'd like to have an auction list, you can apply and get a free auction list. Don't forget, request your free auction list right below me.